Hi and welcome back to Dusting History. I'm going to continue with the Titanic theme today. Today's image is the Titanic and the Olympic side by side in the dry dock. Now looking at this image, you can see the sunlight is quite low and quite bright on the ships. So I'm going to use this image as reference. I don't know if it's early morning or late afternoon, but I like the light and I like the fact that the sun is behind us on the right hand side. So as you know, with colorization, I'm only affecting the color, not the luminance of the image. So I can sample a background like that, stamp it down, paint some of the color around, and get the kind of sky I want without changing the luminance, without painting puffy clouds onto the picture, which is something I definitely don't want to do. I'm also going to grab the water from this image as well, and simply clone brush it around till I get enough to cover my photograph. I quite like that sort of redder reflection in the water where the cruise liner was. I'm going to change that up a bit later, but for now I'm just blocking in simple colours. So now with another layer, I'm going to block in some of the colours of the Titanic and the Olympic. This is another colour layer above the sky and the water, and it's really just colour by numbers, trying to block out the colours, trying to work out what goes where. It's actually pretty rough at this stage. Now what I really like about that cruise liner is that it has that cool side on the shadow side and that slightly more, well, very much more warm side on the side of the ship that's facing the sun. So I'm going to try and indicate that a little bit here with my colours. I like how that blue wash has blended the smokestacks into the background a little bit. It's taken some of the vibrance out of that yellow, which is always something people tend to paint way too intensely, I think, in some of these restos. You'll also notice I put quite a yellow, or quite a bright yellow stripe where the sun's hitting the paintwork, and I like that sort of effect of light sort of blooming into the intense orangey colours on a low sun. Now here I've selected the ships and I'm going to put a glow on the inside of them there. And you can see I'm playing with how broad that's going to be. I'm going to make that an orange, but a fairly pale orange, as though the environment light, the backlight, is so strong that it's bled some kind of orange bleed around the edges of the ship. That's something you get a lot in photography. I'm sure you've seen it. I'm also only going to restrict that to the sky area. It's definitely not going down the bottom where the tugboat is there. You see I'm painting that away. So I'm just keeping that subtle, hazy orange bleed. Still experimenting with ideas. Try to imagine if that smoke that's coming out of that tugboat would indeed catch any of that yellow light from raking across the bow. You see I'm indicating the sun and those parallel rays of light that would be streaking across the ship-ish. But it's sort of more behind us, not just over there. Sometimes if you see me adjusting layers and things popping on and off, that's actually me wondering why the hell I'm actually not painting colour when I think I should be, and invariably I'm on the wrong layer, or I have a mask selection. I'm always making mistakes. It's just how this goes. So by this stage you can see I'm trying to clean up the colours. I haven't even got into the point of cleaning up the background and taking all the dirt and spots off the image. I'm just going to work around the ship and try to tidy up some of my assumptions. And of course, because there's two ships in the image, I have to do it all twice. I probably should have picked a simpler picture. So now I can move on to some other things. This is a little piece of concrete or a pier. I'm just going to stretch that around pretty roughly and stick that down as a color layer. So all I'm really stealing from that image is its color, and even then it's too saturated and too bright, but at least it's bringing some variation into the picture, which is what I require. Later on, I'm not even sure if I recorded it. I think I go back and just redo that pier and put a lot more of a warm note in, a bit more of a fresh kind of concrete color. I'll select the ships again and generate a mask, and then use that mask just to clip out some of the paint. So if I've painted outside the lines basically on the ships, I can use that mask just to constrain the colors or the paint job to the hull of the ship. And Photoshop does a pretty good job. I was using select subject, and it knows enough to select both ships. By this stage, I'm really keen to get a little bit of color variation in there, and I know that those ships had wooden decks, and so with the sun beaming down, I'm going to paint some warm tones on the ceiling above, simulating the idea that the wooden decks have reflected some of their warmth up onto the ceiling. Now I'll put some colour into the far dock. I found a pretty interesting dry dock here, and I like it because it's not only concrete, it's got a lot of rust and also mould growing as well. So I'm just going to isolate those colours to the side wall there. I like how a little bit of it has crept on top, put a bit of that greeny, mucky colour on top as well. I'm going to also clip it out as a square using a, what is that? That's perspective crop, I think, and just paste that down a few times. Again, only using the colour information, none of the luminance. And you can see it's a pretty good way of just smashing out some simple colour. Once that's down and I'm fairly happy with that, I can go and select some of those colours and just paint around. Paint a little bit more rust, paint a bit more algae, and just try to grab bits and pieces that I like of what happened from that paste down. Now onto the tugboats. They've been left alone for quite a while. Again, you can see where the highlights run up the smokestack. I've got that faint little edge of broader oranger light, and I think that really adds kind of a photographic quality or an optical quality to the colorization. At this stage, I'm struggling a little bit to understand what's what. So I'm just making some guesses basically. I did a little research trying to find out what tugs were there in the dry dock and what colour they were, and I didn't find very much. I found a lot of black and white photographs and a lot of descriptions, but I did find a couple of dinky toy looking pictures of Titanic tugs, and that's enough just to give me a kind of an idea. The ones on the right, where there's two of them stacked up with the yellow funnels, I'm going to use that as a basis for the tug that I'm painting right now. Now, one thing that's been bothering me a little bit is the way that the water has been just stamped down over the whole thing. That blue that I grabbed from that cruise liner image, it's kind of right. It's the right kind of idea for water. But what happens is water usually is more than one colour. On the dark side of the waves it's lifting up, you quite often get a different value or a different colour than the colour that's on the top. You can see that when I zoom in on that image, there's all sorts of greens and blues going on. So those top surfaces of the water should reflect more of the sky, and the front faces should have more blue in them. So I'm going to paint a lot of this kind of green colour around, and then eventually I'll paint a bit of sky colour around, and then using a really old trick in Photoshop, I'm going to use the underlying layer slider, and what that does is anything dark on the underlying layer gets knocked out of the layer I'm painting. And what that does is constrict. You can see there, if I paint red, it just constricts the new color to the bright parts of the wave. So I can just keep those greens and a few other colors and a little bit of the sky color. I can keep those constrained to those brighter, flatter tops of the water surface. And you could see in a second, after I finish painting these lines on the ships, I paint a little bit of sky color on the water right here on the edge where it's a little brighter. Now there's not much to be said for the people. I'm trying to put pink faces on them and just some muted tones, some muted blues and greens and kind of warm brown kind of colours, just to make sure that they all look sort of individual, but they're all still fairly dark as figures. Just a couple more dabs of colour here and there just to try and put a tiny bit more life into the image. And then actually something I need to do that I normally start with, but I've waited till almost the end, which is to actually clean the picture. So here I am just taking all those dots and spots, damage, dirt, fingerprints off the image. And once that's done, this is obviously sped up 2,000 times, but once that work was done, I think I have gotten as far as I'm going to get with this image, so I'm going to call it a day. I hope you like my image. I hope you like the choice I made to set the time of day that I did. I think it really adds something to the picture. I had a great time this time. I mean, I really enjoyed myself, and I hope you did too. And we'll see you next time on Dusting History. Thank you. Bye-bye.